Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode review. This time we will be going over episode 27 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, the beginning of the new season arc, whatever you want to call it. And it was one of, and this is saying a lot for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, one of the trippier episodes that we have gotten thus far. And generally speaking, I thought it was a really good Rook focus episode. Probably the best focus episode any character has had, maybe other than Yugioh thus far in the show. But even if you include Yugioh, I think it was one of the best focus episodes of any character, because the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's is these characters are always together in a group. And while the group dynamic is great, the way that you can really love and appreciate a character a little more is by giving them a solo focus episode, and that is exactly what we got in episode 27 with Rook. And I know Rook is a character that a lot of people love. He's a character that, as the episodes have been going on, has seemingly become dumber and dumber, and as Kaizo put it in this episode, he's finally just lost his mind, and quite literally, he quite literally loses his mind in this episode. I don't know what happens in this episode. I have a few theories that I want to discuss with you, and of course I'm really excited to hear from all of you. But the episode starts in a really chilling kind of way with Neil, Top of Hexagon, and Mr. Goha. Top of Hexagon is... Everyone at Top of Hexagon except Mimi is claiming that Neil betrayed them, that Neil needs to be fired, that Neil is no longer, fit to serve Goha City and Goha Corporation, and Mr. Goha is there just kind of listening to everything, and Neil actually walks in and says that even though his Providence understands the potential of Rush Duels, he still does not view himself as being part of the Rush Duel phenomenon, and Mr. Goha laughs and actually speaks and calls Neil naive. And it was clearly a groundbreaking moment, not only for the show that Mr. Goha spoke, but for everyone that was around him, because the second Mr. Goha even utters a word, every single person in that room is stunned. And they're not stunned because he said something groundbreaking like, I am Otis, or I am the Hologram Man. He said, "You are naive, Neil." That's all he said. And actually, the people at the table would agree with him, but they were still so shocked just for the sheer fact that Mr. Goha actually spoke words. And Mr. Goha goes on to say that it's gotten to the point where it is not an exaggeration to say that Rush Duels are our enemy, and why isn't every single person in this room trying to destroy and completely crush Rush Duels? And no one really had an answer to that. Neil was clearly frustrated that his Providence realizing the potential of Rush Duels means absolutely nothing to any of these people in the room, and that his hands are kind of tied, quite figuratively and literally. There's really nothing that he can do going forward. He can't duel, for what we know. He's lost his account, and his words mean absolutely nothing in the face of Mr. Goha, and of course in Top of Hexagon, who view him as a traitor. So I was happy that Neil was back, and I'm excited to see the role that he's going to play going forward. But just like Mimi, he's working for an organization that he definitely does not fully agree with. And while I don't think we're going to get much information on the other members of Tops of Hexagon, I think they're probably going to be just kind of figureheads, and we're probably not even going to get the names of the other 5 members. I do love the dynamic that is forming within Goha, and I am really going to continue to look forward to the meetings. So that was a great start to the episode, and then we get Roman and Gakuto, and they have a nice moment. I think the friendship between Roman and Gakuto has been really fun to watch. Obviously, they have a little bit of a rivalry, being the two characters that dueled each other during the ROA 2 out of 3 tournament in Sevens Road Rush Hall, and they kind of duel each other at the end of the episode as well. But they're kind of partnering off, and they're becoming really good friends, I feel like. So it's really cool to see the dynamic continue to blossom and expand between them. And Roman says that she woke up with a bad feeling and was unable to get back to sleep. And she says a little later on that the bad feeling might have been what Rook was doing. I don't know if that's necessarily true. This is an episode that I feel was foreshadowing a lot of things, and I think Roman having this bad feeling yes, they kind of gave an explanation to it about, Rook is forming this club in the school. I don't really buy it. Just like the whole Roman being tone-deaf thing played a factor 10 episodes later in the show, I don't buy the fact that this bad feeling and this bad omen that Roman had in the morning was just kind of a quick throwaway line so they could make a joke for this episode. I just think that something bad is coming. That's really what I'm kind of left with after watching this episode. And even the way this episode played out with Rook was really, really interesting. So Rook forms the Rook Club, where he wants everyone to come and rush duel, and he starts trying to recruit people for it. And Yugioh, Gakuto, and Roman say no. They just leave him. He tries to even get Yugioh, and Yugioh says, "The Apocalypse Club is my life, and I only have one life." And that's true. Yugioh is absolutely right. Live your life the way you want to live it, as long as it doesn't harm anyone. Yugioh is absolutely correct. But Rook doesn't really hear him and says, "All right, I'll see you there later." And Yugioh obviously is not coming. And so Rook is waiting for people to show up at his club, and no one comes, and then he decides to get involved with sports. He's a great basketball player, akin to LeBron. He's a great football player, akin to Messi. And he's a great baseball player, akin to, Bryce Harper. I hate Bryce Harper, not Bryce Harper. Derek Jeter, why not? Even though I'm a Mets fan, that's probably all. I don't know why the first two players I thought of was Phillies and Yankees, but whatever. Anyway, Rook is this awesome athlete, and he's trying to recruit these players to join the Rush Duel Club. And the second he brings up Yugioh, the jocks of the school are all like, Yugioh, really? Like, that's a solo game that you have to play by yourself. It's lonely. It's boring. And how fitting is it that, again, Sevens does things that are very meta and I think speak on a lot of narratives that we face in the real world, way more so than I expected when this show was first announced. And how fitting is it that jocks from the baseball, basketball, and football or soccer club all bash Rook for playing Yugioh, and clearly in the moment look down on him for it as soon as he brings up the fact that he wants people to rush duel. That is just so fitting. I think probably everyone watching this video has some sort of real-life experience where they were either bullied or felt uncomfortable or looked down on by the jocks for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or doing an activity that wasn't viewed as quote-unquote cool in high school. I know I've been there, and I know probably every single person has been there, unless you were, the star quarterback of your high school football team. And so the fact that Sevens spoke on that relationship between, nerds, and I've always considered myself a nerd, nerds and jocks was really unexpected and incredible. And the difference between most of the ways those conversations play out where, you just kind of ignore it. Rook actually fights back, and Rook kind of goes on a little bit of a rant here. And as he's kind of getting picked on and defending rush duels, Roman, Gakuto, and Yugioh are all watching him. And I'm kind of surprised that the three of them didn't immediately come to Rook's side, although I guess it kind of fits because Rook is always, Rook is a hothead, and he kind of does things that maybe the other three characters wouldn't necessarily do or agree with. But I'm very surprised it took as long as it did for Yugioh, Roman, and Gakuto to go and make sure Rook was okay. That was a part that kind of surprised me a little bit, and I'm happy that they did end up going, and the episode did end on a more happy note. But as the episode was playing out, and especially the scene that was actually a very, very kind of upsetting scene to watch, I was a little irritated that none of his friends went to check up on him right away, right after that happened. And, that was just kind of something that I noticed and thought of, but Rook goes back to the club, and he starts dueling with himself, and this man literally has a 2-minute duel with himself, making the sound effects, tracking the life points. It was hilarious. And then there's a point where, he's running to switch sides, and he bangs his leg on the table, and he falls over, and he rubs one of his cards, and he talks about how the card has a weird substance, and then you start seeing tears fall on the card, and not only that, but his hand also started trembling, which is, what happens when you start crying. And I thought that was a really nice little touch that some people might not have even seen. And all of a sudden, a scene that was really funny got really sad flipped on a 180 immediately. And Rook is just one of those characters that you don't think many things bother him. At least I don't. There's some people who I feel are almost like too ignorant to be sad, because they're just like kind of in their own world and they're so happy with everything, and that's that. And that's not a bad thing, by the way, although, well, crying is healthy and being sad is healthy. But Rook is one of those characters that I would not think any of this really bothers him, because he's just, again, in his own world, and he's doing everything that he wants to do and everything that he loves, and he is a little bit of an airhead at times. And I just did not think that being sad and being lonely and feeling like a little bit of a failure was emotions that a character like him would ever feel. And the fact that he did feel that way really made me relate to him and like and appreciate his character so much more. And it was a really sad scene. And as that's happening, this is where the episode gets weird. He gets teleported to this world. You see these ruins all around him, and he is all of a sudden dueling a version of himself that looks more evil and serious. The eyes were way more red, which symbolizes evil in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I feel like in shows. And he goes on to pick up the duel with this unknown, mysterious duelist character who makes the stakes the highest we have ever seen them. He says whoever loses this duel is going to vanish from this world. There only needs to be one Luke. And that is the first time in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s where you can argue that life or death stakes was in a duel. And that is probably a good sign if you're someone who wants higher stakes at some point. It's probably a really good sign, because it tells me that the show is at least capable of going down that route if they choose. I'm not sure if they ever will in the real world make duels life or death, but clearly they have no issue going to this weird spirit world. I don't know if it's the spirit world, and making a duel a life or death. And I don't know if it was more symbolic, where Rook was dueling the demon within his heart or the inner demons of his mind, and if he lost, those demons were going to be released and he was going to ultimately change the kind of person that he was for the worse. Like, it could have just been a whole literature and figurative duel. It might not be a literal duel, but with everything going on with Rook, the fact that he has this power where he can shut down electricity, and it clearly is not the effect of his watch, because Yuga, Gakuto, and Roman were not able to do it. And now he gets teleported to this weird world where he duels an evil version of himself, and he gets an upgraded version of Dragears, Miragears, which was an amazing card. We've known about that card for a while. His new ace, it's, Dragears on crack, as a lot of people have referred to it as. It just, there's something more with Rook, and I don't really know what it is. And even the interaction he has with his new ace at the end of this episode, where he's able to, like, pet his ace, and his ace monster Miragears comes down and is like face to face with him. It's almost like he can connect with dual spirits. And does this have anything to do with Dragears being on one of the ruin tablets in Otis's lair, 20 or 15 episodes ago? Maybe that's the world that he's able to, get access to, because Dragears has some connection to it. I don't know, but the fact that this is the first episode of a new season makes me think it's probably littered with foreshadowing, and I don't know. I don't know whether to take this as a figurative duel or a literal duel, where he dueled some sort of real character that was acting like himself, trying to push Rook to be a better version of himself. I don't know. It was just a very weird sequence of events, and this is real and not in his mind, because when Yuga and company finally open the door to go into the club, you see a shining light, and all of them are shocked by the shining light. The light goes away, and then Rook is there. So Rook clearly was not hallucinating. He clearly was in another world, and Sevens would not have done that, where they would not have shown the shining light as Yuga opened the door, if they wanted it to not mean something. Every little thing they do, especially at the beginning of seasons, means something. So how did Rook access this world? Why was he dueling an evilish version of himself that at the end of the day, this version, though, wanted him to win and become the true king? I don't know. So many unanswered questions, which is exactly what an opening episode of an arc should do. Great episode for Rook. I thought it was a really good episode of Sevens. Next week, we have Roman and Sushiko. That should be a lot of fun, but more importantly, Asana Rokuyo. This is most likely her. Skin color, hair color reminds a lot of people of Marek. This is most likely the girl who at the end of 26 said, "We will surely and utterly crush Rush Duels." She's clearly trying to befriend Yugioh, or at least get on a positive first touch with Yugioh, which is clearly fake. I mean, if it is Asana, it's clearly fake. She does not want to be friends with Yugioh. She wants to destroy Rush Duels. So, love the design. And if this girl is going to be the first girl Yu-Gi-Oh antagonist, I am so excited to watch it play out. 28 should be a great one. 27 was enjoyable. And you guys let me know all your theories and thoughts on one of the weirder episodes of Sevens. Weird, but definitely really interesting, and I thought really well done. Rook went up a bunch of stock points in my eyes. Really love this episode for Rook. Thank you all so much for watching. And a special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Panther J, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, and Aura Dragon, and to my Diamond tier patrons, Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, and Anime Kaput, and to my Egyptian God tier patrons, XZ's Lover 104, Pegasus Seiya, and Stella Sky. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon and who is a YouTube channel member. You guys are amazing. And thank you to everyone who just watches my videos. Without you all, I would not be able to do this. I will talk to you down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.